services of the Michigan Leadership Institute to facilitate its search process. I'm John Silveri with the Michigan Leadership Institute. I'll be giving Dr. Outlaw a brief opportunity to give some introductory remarks, introduce himself, and then I'll be asking your questions. We'll get through as many of these questions as possible before our scheduled ending time of 7 o'clock. Duplicate questions were eliminated. I do want to stress that questions represent the unique perspectives of those who submitted them and should be taken as such. So just a reminder to those watching and listening that you are strongly encouraged to provide feedback to the Board of Education afterward via the interview feedback form link that you were provided with. It's also up on the district website. Although it's the responsibility of the board to select the new superintendent, it is really important to them that they get your feedback, your perspective on this process. It will be greatly appreciated. So, having said all of that, Dr. Outlaw, I'll give the floor to you.
All right. Well, I want to just begin by just saying thank you to everyone. Appreciate you being here and appreciate this opportunity to be applying for this position. Had a chance over the last couple of hours to meet with your administrative team virtually, of course, and your teachers. And I can tell you, you have some unbelievable people in this district, some staff members that are just really special people. To give a little bit of background on myself here, I started as a teacher in the Novi School District. I was a high school Spanish and social studies teacher. I was a baseball coach, basketball coach, did club sponsorship, and a variety of other things like that. Moved into administration, and I spent 2 years as a dean of student in Novi. And then I went on to the Grosse Pointe School District, and I spent 11 years in Grosse Pointe. That was an incredible time in my life. I spent time as athletic director at Grosse Pointe South High School, assistant principal at Grosse Pointe North High School, and then I was back as principal of Grosse Pointe South High School. And after that, I moved on and I have been superintendent in the Brandon School District for the past 6 years. Brandon is in northwest Oakland County, for anybody that doesn't know that. It has been an unbelievable experience. Brandon is a pretty special place. In 2014, it was in a really tough spot as a school district, on the verge of deficit as a district, and it lost a lot of trust with the community. And we've worked really hard as a team, our leadership team, our teachers, our parents, everybody. We've worked together as a team over the past 6 years and really feel that we've made an incredible amount of progress for the district during that time. I'm very proud of our team for their efforts. In addition to that, I have 2 degrees from the University of Michigan, and I have ed specialist and a doctoral degree from Wayne State University. After my schooling ended in 2009, I began teaching again. And this is just a hobby for me, and I do it whenever my schedule permits. But I taught for a couple of years at Madonna University. I've been with Wayne State since 2012, and I've been with Oakland University since 2015. At Wayne State, I teach a leadership development course, and I teach a public relations course. And at Oakland University, I teach school finance and human resource management. And that's been incredible. I just had a chance to get back to my roots as a teacher, and it keeps me really connected with some of the most current trends in education as well. Private life, I am married to my beautiful wife, Nicole. She is a Spanish teacher in the Pinckney School District, and she's been doing that for 17 years. We have 2 beautiful children. My son Tyler is 13 years old, and my daughter Hannah is 10 years old. So again, thrilled to be here and looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you so much. Thanks, John.
Thanks, man. All right, the first question is from a parent, Terry Castron. How do you intend to communicate with your community members and parents and students? And how frequently do you expect to be communicating with them?
So the obvious answer is extensively, but that's not the correct answer. And this is what we've learned in my time as superintendent here. We have been very strategic in the way that we communicate. And what I mean by that is you can go to certain districts where there's very little communication and parents are really left out of the loop. That's unacceptable. That is not my style at all. But on the flip side of it, you can go to other districts where they over communicate and parents are getting just inundated with 1,000 emails from 1,000 different people, and parents and kids and everybody has a difficult time figuring out what exactly the district wants them to do. So what we did in Brandon early on is I formed a group that looked at this exact topic. And we had a group of teachers, we had some of our communication leaders, and we had a whole group of parents that came in to talk about how we communicate. And what we have emphasized in our district is quality over quantity. We have very specific guidelines. I send my newsletter to the families on the first day of every month. We know that that's going to happen. So I don't trip up over other people. We don't want people to get 3 newsletters on the same days. The principals typically put theirs out on Monday morning, and the rest of the week is for teachers. We have to be careful so that parents can focus in on one person communicating with them at a time. So I think that has been really effective for us. For me, I have a newsletter that I do. If you get a chance to go to the Brandon website, just look on the quick links, superintendent column. You can see some of the work that I've done in the district. I do a column in the local paper once a month, and I write about things about the school district and about education, alumni, and things like that. It's just a way for me to connect with the community. I do a lot of one-to-one communication. Being visible is probably the best communication tool that I have. Talking to people at games, at the band, being in the hallways, talking to teachers in the school. But all of those strategies are some of the things that I do as part of a comprehensive plan to communicate effectively with all of our community. So
All right.
thank you, John.
Thank you. From Megan King, parents, give 3 examples in your current position where you have fought to reduce a material budget item in your district.
So I struggle with hearing fighting for reductions. That's tough to fight for a reduction because everything is important in a school district, and sometimes you have to make those difficult decisions. The question was about material reductions. The reality is that material reductions are a very small part of the overall financial pie of a school district. About 80 to 85% of your resources are allocated towards staff. And then you have this next portion that's kind of your purchase services, contracts. That's all of your, building maintenance and all those type of things, and your supplies and some of those type of things. That's a small pot of money there. So in my 6 years as superintendent, most of the things that we've discussed in the financial area have been in those first 2 categories. For me, these are some of the things that we've looked at. It's been really important to me. I use this term called, I actually learned this from our finance director, but use this term academic return on investment. We work really hard to keep the cuts as far away from the kids as possible. So the things that bring the least impact for kids, that's where we look first. As far as staffing, a lot of the reductions in staffing are only if we're losing students. In the Brandon community, it is a declining overall population, especially with young families, which is one of their challenges there. And so if we're going to lose 100 students, for example, that means 4 less teachers that you might need. So a lot of it's right sizing on the staffing side. On the purchase services contract zone, that's a spot where you can surprisingly save a lot of money by doing a good job of bidding your projects. Again, I mentioned my finance director. She's done a wonderful job. She is a tough cookie that gets good contracts for the district. That's a spot where we've been able to save considerable resources while also providing great services to kids. And then I would say probably the third big bucket, since we're looking at 3 here for me, is efficiency. And anybody that has a business, they know about finding efficiencies, ways to provide the same product in a more efficient or more cost-effective way. I call those the win-win solutions. We're always looking for things where we can save money, but not sacrifice service to kids. And I'll just give you one example of that. In 2014-15, when I came to the district, began looking at our alternative education program. And it was a very expensive program in the way that it was being delivered. And for the 15-16 school year, we made a pretty significant change to how we did it, the location of it. We were able to save about $500,000 a year, and we still provided an outstanding experience to those students. So that would be an example of an efficiency that has helped benefit our district. So,
All right.
thank you. Great question.
This is from Donna Jakubic, a community member. As a parent of 3 South Lyon graduates, our experience identified a lack of consistency across district high schools and middle schools, as well as between the same class and the same school with different teachers. This was especially apparent within the math department, where differences existed in pacing, assessments, and allowable support, such as calculator use. How do you envision supporting the South Lyon teachers in creating professional learning communities?
Absolutely. So to address the first question on it, a really comprehensive strategic plan is an important piece of the puzzle to keep a district the size of South Lyon together and headed in the same direction. There should be clarity about what those expectations are. There should be clarity around the flexibility that teachers have with things like calculators and things that you were talking about. There should be clarity about some of those things that we're delivering for students. There's a term that there's a guy named Rick DeFore. He's one of the big research people in education. He talked about this idea of loose, tight leadership, that you're going to be very tight on certain things and you can be loose on other things. And it's the same thing across the district the size of South Lyon. You're going to be tight on certain things. We're going to teach the standards. We're going to teach the curriculum. We're going to carry out the district's mission. We're going to care about our kids. We're going to communicate well with our parents. There's certain things that fall in that non-negotiable category. And then there's other things that are loose. And some of those things are the teaching style. I taught, social studies and Spanish. So I think about one of my social studies classes, and I had my own creative flair in my class, and the next teacher over had their creative flair. So it's okay that we're different, but we're still teaching the same content and similar pacing. So the community, you mentioned the learning community. The learning community is an absolute paramount piece to that, because that's where teachers are able to talk and communicate and share what they're doing in each other's classes. Because when you have that collaboration, they're able to have those conversations about how to reduce variability between schools and between classes. So I'm not sure if the district has learning communities at this time, but if not, that would be something I would really like to discuss, because you have to build in time for staff to work together and to align as a district.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. It's a great question.
This is from Colin Dominguez, a parent. There was a lack of direction and clarity after the start of the pandemic school shutdown. Some teachers immediately began implementing virtual classrooms and virtual teacher office hours. Others did not. Even now, implementation has been more of a hodgepodge of packets and 1 or 2 hours of virtual class time with limited teacher oversight of the work product. How do you envision the future of the virtual classroom in light of new spacing standards? And how do you expect to hold teachers accountable in the age of remote classrooms?
So I think the experience that you're talking about is not uncommon. I think that what has taken place over the last month or two, actually, it really kind of started at the beginning of March. Obviously, the governor's order came on March 16th. But I think it was a time where leadership really mattered. It was one of those times where we didn't have weeks and weeks and weeks to sit around and strategize and think about the best way to do things. It was a time where leadership had to drive good decisions in a quick manner, had to communicate quickly and effectively with families. And I think the biggest thing that leaders have to do is they had to talk about what the expectations are and make those very clear to everybody involved. In Brandon, where I'm superintendent, that was something I worked really hard on, not just on the what, but on the why, and also what the expectations were for the delivery. And some people push back on it. We set a high bar. We said, we're going to make this next 8 weeks as valuable as possible for every kid here. We're not going to punt on this whole school year. We're going to take care of our kids. We're going to make every minute count. And after some good discussion and working together as a team, our teachers were very on board. But they know what the non-negotiables are. They know exactly what is expected, and they're delivering, and they're doing a marvelous job. I'm so proud of the teachers in Brandon right now. As far as what's going to happen in the fall, the governor in her speeches is talking a lot about doing social distancing and different things. That's 4 months from now, so I am certainly hopeful that that is not necessary. We need to be back in a traditional setting for a whole variety of reasons. But let's do the hypothetical. A hypothetical that we're doing some sort of hybrid or virtual still at that point. Number one priority for me is that you have to have expectations that every minute counts for students. We have this limited amount of time that we have to work with the student. We cannot have another 2 months like what we've had in this state. The kids, the students, they need a high quality education. They need their teachers. They need to learn. They need to collaborate with their classmates. And we've got to find a way to have that happen. And I don't think there's any way that we should lower the bar of our commitment to students and families. The methodology to get there is something to be determined. We have to find out what those variables are. Some of the things that in Brandon are working really well is we've worked for the last several years to increase the number of personal devices for students, and we were nearly one-to-one technology as a district when this pandemic hit. Put us in a very unique situation, and we were able to deliver high quality product to our students immediately because we had the resources and we had planned ahead with that. So if I were to be hired here, it's one of the questions I'd want to learn about is how are we doing with devices? Where are we at? What are the gaps? And I would use that CARES Act money. I think there's about $100,000 that's been allocated for South Lyon School District and whatever we could do in budget. I think the more devices you have, the better product that you're able to deliver for students in this unique time period. So those are a few thoughts on that, but you can't lower expectations.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So from Kim Denoyer, who is a parent, where do you see opportunities to improve the statewide rankings of the South Lyon School District? What specifically do you plan to do to make South Lyon schools more competitive on a statewide basis?
It's a great question. And it's a question that I've had many, many conversations in my career. My job before Brandon, I was the principal of Grosse Pointe South High School. And at that time, that was one of the top 2 or 3 high schools in the state of Michigan. And I can tell you this, Grosse Pointe South is it's a special high school. But the secret sauce of Grosse Pointe came down to a couple different things. One is community expectations. 2 was the expectations of parents. 3, expectations of students. And 4, really the commitment to delivering on those expectations. And everybody was part of this rolling up the sleeves and delivering that high quality product. It was a non-negotiable that we were going to do a great job and our kids were going to be really successful. So for me, where does that start? It starts with expectations. Do we expect to be great or do we expect to be mediocre? So in Brandon, for the past 6 years, we have worked extensively on elevating expectations of what is possible, what all students are able to do in our school system. And we've made considerable strides in that area. In South Lyon, I'd want to do that same type of thing. I'd want to talk about where I would like to assess where expectations are now and look at some of the things that we might be able to do to get students to reach that next level. I talked in my interviews a little bit about my belief in the individualization of education. And what I mean by that is that each child is different. Each child has different things that they want to do, different strengths and weaknesses. So if you want to be the best, you don't necessarily focus on the box score. You focus on doing things the right way. You challenge students every day to do their best. We give them the best curriculum, the best instruction possible. We learn as much as we can about the kids. We use assessment to help guide us. We work together as a cohesive unit, and we're committed to every day, every kid getting better. If we do that, whatever measure you throw at us, we're going to keep climbing up those rankings, and that would be my approach. So thanks, John. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. From Brad Gibbons, a parent, what is your ideal classroom size for our K through 12th grade classes? How would you achieve that goal without building new schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of staffing in my career. Obviously, I've done it at the building level, and for 6 years, I've done staffing for the Brandon School District. So I've had quite a bit of experience in exactly what you're talking about. I'll give you the short answer on it. The younger the kids, the lower the class sizes. That is, students need more support and more individualized attention when they're 5 years old than they do when they're 18 years old. So I think that's kind of a natural progression. Specific numbers, I have seen the collective bargaining agreement that the district has, and I think they're in safe zones to keep class sizes to be appropriate. Again, it's about a balance between having a class size that's ideal for learning, but also being mindful of the resources that you have to work with as a school system. So finding that sweet spot, I think, is the key. But the younger classes are the spots where you need to have the lowest class sizes. Thank you.
Next question is from Ann Krushka, who is a parent, and it's a lengthy question. So I'll go through the question, and then if you need me to repeat any part of it or all of it, I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So many parents are looking ahead to the 2021 school year and expressing concerns about whether there will be face-to-face instruction in school. It's a very real possibility that a spike in COVID-19 cases could force us back to online instruction. Private schools are offering their students a full curriculum. Our high school students are competing with these private school students for spots at prestigious universities. Specifically at the high school level, many parents want their students to have access to the complete curriculum, especially in math, science, English, foreign language, and their AP classes. How confident are you that you can lead our district to offer curriculum at the pace of traditional face-to-face instruction should a pause or end to face-to-face instruction become an issue for the next school year?
That's a absolutely fantastic question. I guess the first question that I would want to answer in order to approach this is, where are we at with devices? You need to have those devices. If we have to do some sort of social distancing or whatever, I think a lot of people have heard some of the things the governor has talked about. We have to do some sort of hybrid type system or virtual. You have to have the devices. So that has to be done. We've got several months. That's a key piece. But if that happens, if you have those devices in the fall, we have to do as much as we can in the fall. Our students need it, and you're exactly right. This is their only year. When I was talking with the teachers earlier, I was saying that I always think about, my daughter is in 4th grade. She only has 1 year in 4th grade. That's it. She doesn't have 3 years for us to figure out challenges and things like that. I need in September for my daughter to have a great education. We can't wait, months or years for this pandemic to go away. We have to figure out how to deliver the highest quality to her now. So we have to get it done. We have to figure that out. Can you do it? Virtual learning is different, but if we could do hybrid learning is a spot where I think we could get it done, where students are doing part of their time online and part of it in person. I think if you could come up with a system like that, I think that we can set the bar high for all of our students and really deliver the quality product in a really strange environment to our students. So thank you for that question.
So related to that, and there were a couple questions that spoke to this, and you touched on it, but what would you say about making sure that students and parents have access to the technology and IT support that they will need or may need?
I mentioned in Brandon that we've been planning, and each year we've been purchasing devices. We had a long range plan. We didn't get any grants or we didn't have bonds or anything like that. We just squirreled away money every single year to buy devices, and we're reaping the benefits of that today. So I'd be really curious to see where you're at with that. But I think that it needs to be a high priority for the district to get as many devices to the district as possible, because that'll allow you to be flexible. Ideally, in Brandon, we've made the decision we're going to be one-to-one. Brandon will be one-to-one. Every student will have their own device. And the reason for that is in October, we have a spike and they say, you have to go home. We want to be able to quickly, immediately have our students work. We've trained our staff in a way that they can use this Google Classrooms and these platforms like Zoom and Google Meets. They can use those anywhere. They've been trained on this stuff. So if something were to happen, we can quickly transition, but you have to have the devices in order to have that flexibility. So devices have to be a huge priority if we want to be nimble. So
All right,
thank you.
thanks. This from Lori Odell, a parent. We're a rural community with many back roads. Describe your experience with such a community and how you will address inclement weather challenges.
All right, I have to smirk because I'm in the Brandon School District. 2/3 of the roads are back roads. And I've learned more about back roads and how water comes up through the dirt and forms ice. And I have learned so much about back roads and ice and weather conditions over the last 6 years that I should write a book about it. But inclement weather, that is something that applies to every single district. I do understand the challenging roads. And I make the decision. I always err on the side of caution, but it's also caution, but also using good logic. Um, Sometimes it requires a lot of collaboration with your surrounding districts and finding out what they're doing. But at the end of the day, it's about what's safest for South Lyon students. And that includes students in neighborhoods as well as students on back roads. And that's what I've done for the past 6 years. And if I were superintendent here, I would continue that same practice.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
From Andrea O'Keefe, a parent. South Lyon Community Schools went from having a longtime superintendent to a fair amount of shifting in personnel at central office during the past few years, including multiple mid-year departures. What is your vision for how your leadership will provide more long-term continuity for our students, families, staff, and administrators so that we not only maintain a status quo of doing well, but we are truly a school district that exudes excellence in all areas?
Absolutely. First thing I would say is I'm seeking to have a Bill Pearson-like tenure here. So when you're here for such a long time, so invested for so many years, you build so many connections, and there's a continuity that goes with that. From the team perspective, people stay when they feel like they're part of something special, when they're part of a winner, when they're part of an organization that's greater than a job, when they're part of a family. And that's when your team really stays together. And you're going to have people coming and going. In Brandon, I've had people that have moved on to be central office administrators and have been promoted in different ways. Those things are going to happen. But that retention of the core of your leadership team is so important for the long-term success of your district. It comes down to relationships. I think from the superintendent side, what are the things that your administrators want? Administrators want to have trust. They want to be respected. They want support from your leadership team. They want to be treated fairly. They want to be part of a vision, a clear direction. People like to be part of a winning direction. Those are things that I think keep a team together, keeps a family together. And Brandon, I've been really blessed for the 6 years that I've worked there. Our team has really stayed together. We had a retirement, and I had another person that was promoted to a central office position, an amazing young leader. It's now at a central office in Traverse City. But the rest of the team, we're together, and we've learned about each other. Everything's fast because we trust one another. They know what I'm going to say before I'm going to say it. They could probably finish my sentence. There's continuity that comes with that, and it's fast, and it allows us to provide the best product for the students and for the families in our district. So as a goal, that environment, that team environment that you build with your administrative team is something that would be an enormously high priority for me as superintendent in South Lyon. So thank you. Great question.
Thank you. This from Lynn Hensley, a parent. Do you think it's important or necessary for the superintendent to live in the district?
So I was asked that same question during the teacher round, and I said no. I don't think that it's necessary to live in the community. Let me explain why. First off, let me just say, my wife and I have already been in South Lyon driving around neighborhoods. We've already been on realtor.com looking at, so setting that aside, it is not necessary to live in a community because it's all about where your heart is. Are you putting your heart and soul into the job that you're at? I've been in Brandon for 6 years. I have a 35-minute commute. I have put my heart and soul into that community. And whether I live there or not, I don't think I could have put one more ounce of effort into that community. So it's where I live during the day. It's my second home. And I put my heart and soul in it. So whether I'm in Brighton, 7 miles down the road, or whether I have a home that's within the boundaries, I would be all in no matter what. So is it necessary? No. I know leaders that have lived in the community and they're not engaged with anybody. But what good does that do? They're not a people person. They're not out doing the great things, throughout the community. What's the point of living in the community if you're not engaged? So to me, it's about being engaged in the community, and that's what I would do. So thank you.
Thanks. From Michael Ziegler, a parent. South Lyon has an elaborate program for gifted and talented students at the elementary and middle school levels. Some current research suggests these types of separations are not best educational practice. Can you speak to your philosophy regarding such programs and the research you would use as a guide to help reform them?
Sure. Happy to talk about this. I've had a chance to read about the district's program, and looks like a really solid program. I know it's just about 2% of the students are part of that, and I know that there's a lot of great things that happen with it. Speaking of research, yeah, I've looked extensively at the research. What's interesting about the research about gifted and talented is that it's typically focused on everyone else, not on the gifted student. It's usually on the impact that the gifted student can have on everybody else. Again, not about the gifted student. And for me, that does not fit with my philosophy about education. For me, it's about helping each student to reach beyond their grasp. If a student in ninth grade is beyond anything we have in high school, we have to find some way to challenge that student to reach their the next level as a student. And that's incumbent upon us. In 2014, when I came to the Brandon School District, we were excelling with working with students at the bottom, but we were struggling with students in the middle, and we were doing almost nothing for students at the top. To me, that was a crisis. That is a crisis. And I used the term, I said, we're putting a ceiling on for students with their potential. And to me, that we had to fix that. So what we did is we did an accelerated learning initiative. And we used a lot of the research that you would be talking about here with gifted students. And we looked at research, and we built a program, and we worked together with community members. We had students as part of this committee, and we have had a 5-year effort that we call the Accelerated Learning Initiative. In it, we have accelerated pathway for 25 to 40% of Brandon students in ELA and in math. We've increased the amount of enrichment opportunities for accelerated students. We have worked on breaking down structural barriers that put ceilings on accelerated students. And ultimately, we've looked at grouping, and we've just tried to clear the way so that these students can soar. 2% is a low number. For me, I like to cast a wider net. And I don't call it gifted and talented. I just call it accelerated. There's some students that are ready to move at a faster pace than grade level. And that's what we focus on. So we cast a wider net, and it captures about 40% of our students, and we're able to cross and work together with everybody. But for the South Lyon School District, if I were to be hired, I would be committed to helping every student and setting us up so that every student can be as successful as possible within the school district. So that's gifted students, that's struggling students, that's middle of the road students. Every student has to be able to meet their potential. So that's how I would answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
From Hattie McGuire, parent. Given the foundational importance of solid writing skills, can you tell us about your vision for a system-wide, vertically aligned K-12 approach to writing instruction?
Yeah, it's a great question. When we talk about literacy, I was a Spanish teacher. That was one of my areas, social studies and Spanish. In Spanish, we talk about literacy differently than we do oftentimes when we talk about literacy at the elementary levels. In Spanish, you talk about it that it's reading, writing, speaking, and listening. There's all these 4 core areas that you put in there. That's all part of being a literate student. In schools, if you look at particularly elementary schools across the state, I think we invest an enormous amount of resources into reading for good reason. Reading is absolutely essential. It's probably the #1 important thing, but writing is equally as important. And when we look at our students' writing development, you've got to put a lot of effort and planning into the writing as well as the reading. In Brandon, we've done a couple different things. At the lower level, we've used Words Their Way with the younger students in order to help give them the foundational skills that they need in order to be readers and writers. That has really helped us. We use the workshop model at elementary, and we align, the teachers work together in order to align that writing curriculum. And then once we get into the middle school, what we've used some of the college board direction to help us align. And what we've done is we've had middle school and high school teachers attending many of the same professional developments so that they're able to not just align the curriculum, but also their practice as we look at writing. So those are some of the things that I've done. But having an aligned program in writing and making it a big priority is something that would be very important to me. So thank you.
Thank you. From Terry Castron, parent, what do you view as the single most important role of a school superintendent?
Wow, that's tough because there's so many things that are important. If I had to choose one, so this might sound odd, but stability. A great superintendent needs to be a rock. They need to be the foundation. They need to be the ones that bring calm to the district, that have the vision so that people know where you're going. In a time of crisis, they're the person that brings calm and solution and confidence to parents. They're the ones that communicate in a way that is going to bring calm and stability to your district. So to me, a great superintendent, they're going to challenge people. They're going to challenge the district, move the district forward, but providing that solid foundation, that stability that the children in particular need, I think that's the #1 important role of a superintendent. So that's what I would say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This from Kim Denoyer, a parent. What do you perceive as the reason that our state continues to struggle as compared to other states on a national basis? What research have you done on other states, and what specifically can you offer that you have obtained from districts outside of our state to improve South Lyon?
Okay. So I guess the first thing I would say on it is you always have to be cautious of comparisons between states because a lot of times we use different measures and it's not apples to apples. So I've heard a lot of times, I remember when we had No Child Left Behind and we were looking at the annual yearly progress for subgroups. And in Michigan, our subgroup number was 30 students. And people were complaining that Michigan was not doing a great job with subgroups, but Alabama, I think it was doing it. Their subgroups was 300. So they didn't have any subgroups because their number that they set was so high, but they were doing a better job on No Child Left Behind with meeting the needs of a subgroup. So you always have to be careful between that. But there are areas in Michigan that I would say are areas that we could really improve on as a system. One of the areas that I would, if I had my magic wand and I could throw out some of the ideas, I think that I've heard this term that Michigan has never met a standard that it didn't like. And a lot of times we have so many standards that teachers have to teach so many things that it's just touch the surface of 1,000 things instead of getting deep into some of the things that are really important. I think that's one of the areas that we could really improve upon as a state, especially when it comes to curriculum and instruction. I'd probably say that's #1. I'm going to just throw this out there that I think there is just an unnecessary amount of paperwork and red tape that comes from both the federal government and especially here at the state level that takes teachers away from important teaching and learning. I think that's another area that the state could really improve upon. And then the third area, and I think this is an area where I've probably had the most contact with just because of my professorship and being in school of finance, is the finance area. In Michigan, we're quite a ways into our Proposal A that was put in place in 1994. There are some big areas that need some revision in that area as we're talking about adequate funding for schools. And I would say that that is an area that needs considerable attention in the state of Michigan. And so I would say that's a big one. As far as what we've learned, I have learned a ton, particularly about the financial side of things. I've learned a lot about things that people do for how they fund bonds, how they run their taxes, how they individually fund their schools. It's very different in different states. And then on the curriculum side of things, there's many ideas across the country. When Brandon built its continuity of learning plan for this COVID-19 time period, we communicated with people in Arizona and Kansas, and that's just what you do. We help each other out, and they were a little bit ahead of us, so we were able to learn from them. So those are a few thoughts.
All right, thank you. From Brad Gibbons, parent. As an elementary school parent, our kids are getting a very short time of exposure to their school library, music classes, and art. As STEAM curriculum becomes a higher influence in districts across the country, what will you do to increase the amount of time spent in these learning environments?
Well, this is near and dear to my heart. This is something that I've worked extremely hard on, particularly for the last 6 years. So let me just talk a little bit about this. Elementary special schedules that's the spot where it's fun, it's exciting, it's a chance for students to be creative, it's a chance for them to take the learning during the day and apply it to real world situations. So I think it's really important to have a robust and battery of classes for your specials. So let me talk about Brandon here. Brandon, we had 3 specials in 2014. Today we have 5. We've added elementary Spanish. That's part of a district-wide effort to bolster our language program. That has been a huge success. Our kids love it. Our teachers love it. Our parents are really proud to have that program. So elementary Spanish has been a fantastic addition. The second part of it connects directly with what you brought up here, and you're 100% right about STEM education. And Brandon, I believe it was 2017, we implemented elementary STEM. We used the program Project Lead the Way. For those of you that are not aware of that, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. It's where students work on projects and they really apply their learning, and they serve as engineers as they create robots and butterfly gardens and all these different neat activities. Our kids absolutely love it, but it's really extending the learning that they're getting at elementary in particular. We've also added our middle school STEM using Project Lead the Way. Those classes are doing fantastic, and we have a high school STEM education program as well. Talked about this a little bit with the teachers, and our high school STEM program I'm just so proud of the teachers that put that program together. The projects that they're doing are so cutting edge, are so fun and exciting, real world, and it integrates all of this learning that they're doing in their math and science classes. They're doing things like building off-the-grid homes. They're doing things like building drones. They're doing things with cockroaches and electrodes and all these different things, and it's unbelievable what these kids are doing. The students that are going through these programs are walking out with scholarships to colleges all over the state. Kettering we have a pipeline of students going to Kettering, going into engineering. We've also overlapped with our robotics program. So I'm passionate about STEM. I think STEM is some of the most exciting education going on K-12 these days. That would be an area that I would definitely want to discuss with South Lyon. So thank you.
From Lori Odell, a parent, excessive testing has proven to be detrimental to the learning process. Where do you stand on the issue of standardized testing? How much is enough?
So this was a question that the board asked me in my first interview, and it's an area that I'm pretty passionate about. Um, I I believe there's a role for testing. There's a role for testing. There's a role for local testing. There's a role for state testing. In particular, from the state, it's good. This state has to have some way to measure that we're doing a good job. So I think that it setting that aside, that they have to have a meaningful way to say South Lyon Schools is doing a wonderful job and they're delivering for Michigan students. Setting that aside, I struggle a little bit with how we do our standardized testing. Standardized testing takes place in the spring each year. We have tests that come out in May. And for example, my daughter's in fourth grade. She'll take a test in fourth grade in a normal year, and they won't even get the results until August. My daughter will be in fifth grade before anybody's talking about my daughter. That doesn't help that fourth grade teacher to adjust learning and to make that fourth grade year as valuable as possible. So I believe really strongly in formative assessment. That's formative assessment that's developed by the classroom. That could be simple things that teachers are doing on a day-to-day basis to assess learning. It could be, quizzes. It could be small unit tests. It could be bigger tests like the NWA, and I think you guys use the NWA as well. But when you're able to take the NWA in the fall, you're able to get actionable data on a student that a teacher can use in the classroom. And we can involve the parent in it. We can say, these are deficiencies. These are areas that students need to learn from. And then we can measure that throughout the year. And in that first interview, I did mention that I had the former superintendent for the state of Michigan, Ryan Wiston, came out to Brandon, and we talked about this topic, and we're very aligned, and we were very aligned, God rest his soul. But we were very aligned in our thinking on this topic, and we were talking about making the NWA the state test, because we'd be able to get immediate results, actionable results. There would be multiple iterations of the test during the year. And ultimately, it would give us the data that we really needed to best instruct our students. So those are a few thoughts I have on standardized testing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
From Kim Denoyer, parent, are there successful practices high-achieving school districts are utilizing that can be implemented in South Lyon?
You know what? Step one for me is to listen, learn, and ask questions. So whoever is hired as your superintendent, probably before they're able to really answer that question, is going to have to listen to a lot of people. You can't read this on the website. You can't you can't make that determination without some really intense conversations about where those real gaps are. But can you learn from other districts? Absolutely. And I talked about it before. I had I had the pleasure of spending 18 of my 24 years in two of the most high performing school districts in the state of Michigan, with Novi and Grosse Pointe. And I can tell you the thing that is one of the most important things that happens in a school district, one of the most underappreciated things that happens in a school district, comes down to expectations and belief in what our students are able to do. To me, that is the secret sauce that we had in Grosse Pointe. It was the special thing that when you have expectations of people, people live up to those expectations. If we believe students can't do anything, they will live up to those expectations. So what's the number one thing that we can learn? Set high expectations and have a high level of belief of what every one of our students, whether they're struggling or an honor student, are able to do. So expectations would be big. There's also different programs, the way they can maybe support students. There's a lot of neat ideas that are out there. And as a superintendent, I would want to be a collaborator. And I'm open to learning from what others are doing, of course. And our entire team should be doing that as well. So thank you.
All right, Matt, we've got just about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to ask one more question of you, give you a chance to answer that, and then I want to leave an opportunity for you to make any final comments that you'd like to also. So this is from Lori Odell, a parent, and it's a very short and direct question. Quantity versus quality, what will you stress for our students?
So I already mentioned that at the beginning. I talked a little bit about my belief in quality. Quality is one of those words that I use all the time. When I first came to Brandon in 2014, and we were assessing where that district was at, and we were looking at the gaps, came down to there was three big things that were missing from that district after all of that feedback. And worked with the board, and we call these the district pillars in Brandon. One is quality in all that we do. If anything that we do in a district, it must be quality. We're not going to do everything, but the things that we're going to do them well. That's whether we're cleaning the building, whether it's feeding a student. We all can control our own quality, and whatever we do, it's got to be great, high quality in all that we do. Our second one is service to our families, and our third one is planning for the future. We've used those pillars. Those have been guiding principles that we've used in the Brandon School District for the past 6 years, and they have served us well. But quality, quality, quality. If we're going to do anything in this system, you have to deliver quality. It's too important of a job. Our students are relying on us. Families are relying on us. We have to deliver quality every day. So quality is my answer.
All right, Matt. Thank you. So again, you have an opportunity to make any closing comments that you would like to before we end this virtual question and answer session.
Well, great. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So excited about it, and said this before, but every day, the more I learn about the school district, the more I want to be part of it. I just really feel there's a real connection between what you're looking for and what I'm looking for. I just feel like there's a really good synergy between the two. Talked before about wanting to be a long-term superintendent here. When I talk long-term, I'm not talking 6 years. I'm talking the rest of my career. I want to end my career as a superintendent of the South Lyon School District. To me, that's a 15, 20-year tenure in a district. I want to be there at graduation when next year's kindergartners are walking across the stage. There's something really special about that. In Brandon, I've been there 6 years, and that group that pains me that they're not graduating here or not walking in graduation yet. But that group that would graduate this year, they were middle schoolers when I got there. And I remember them when they were small. And I got to be part of seeing them grow and develop and taking advantage of the cool opportunities and new programs and excelling on the sports fields and excelling in choir and band. And now they're going off into the real world. There's something special about spending a long tenure and investing, investing in an entire generation of South Lyon students. That's something I desire greatly. And my next superintendency, I hope it's right here in the South Lyon School District, but wherever I'm going to be, that is what I'm seeking. That is what I'm looking for, is a long-term tenure. If you have a chance to take a look and see what we've done in the Brandon School District, I think if you were to think about where we were in 2014, we were in real trouble. And 6 years later, I think we're providing an outstanding product for the students of Brandon. It's taken a lot of hard work, tough decision making. It's taken a team approach. We've had to have everybody in the district being part of the solution. Every teacher knows that they make a difference. Every support staff knows that they can make a difference. They're not afraid to bring their ideas to the table. We've created an environment where everybody knows that they have great ideas, great suggestions, and they're part of the solution. On my phone, I get texts from support staff members with ideas. What if we did this, Matt? That is a great setup for getting the best brains to the table. In South Lyon, that's what I would work towards. I would want to join this team and to continue to grow the team approach to delivering the best quality for the student in this community. So I am a passionate educator. I believe so strongly in what we do and how important what we do is. It really drives me every single day to do the best that I can do. So we won't go on and on with this, but I can tell you this, that I love being an educator. I am absolutely so attracted to the South Lyon School District, and honestly, there's no place I'd rather be than South Lyon. Would love to have a chance to join your team. And just thank you all so much for being here this evening and for all the great questions. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Outlaw. Thank you to everyone who was watching and listening in this evening as well. Thank you to those who submitted some really great questions. Appreciate that also. And just a final reminder to please go to the link where you can provide feedback that you either have in your possession or you can find it on the district website. The board will greatly appreciate your feedback, and it will help them tremendously in their decision making. The board will be conducting a virtual site visit to the districts of each of the finalists next week, and then they'll be making their final decision on the 18th, 1 week from Monday. So stay engaged, and thanks once again. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.